There are moments in human relationships when events unfold in subtle ways that seem ordinary on the surface, yet carry deeper meaning beneath emotional reactions. A hidden test is not always dramatic or obvious. Often it appears through small decisions, quiet conversations, or the way someone responds to vulnerability. When a person enters another's life bringing sincerity, patience, or emotional honesty, it naturally creates reflection. This reflection can feel uncomfortable because it exposes attitudes and habits that were never questioned before. Instead of recognizing this moment as an opportunity to grow, many people interpret the discomfort as a problem caused by the other person. The mind begins protecting its familiar identity, choosing quick judgment rather than careful understanding. This is where the hidden test truly begins. It is not about proving perfection, but about observing whether emotional awareness is strong enough to pause before reacting. Every meaningful connection carries moments where empathy must be chosen over assumption. When someone listens with openness, they pass the test through maturity. When they react through fear or ego, they move away from the lesson. Such situations are gentle reminders that relationships do not only connect two individuals, they also connect each person to their own inner patterns. When a person fails this kind of test, the failure rarely happens because of intentional harm. More often it occurs because old emotional habits operate automatically. People tend to repeat familiar reactions, especially when they feel uncertain or exposed. If someone has learned to avoid deep emotional reflection, they may distance themselves the moment a relationship begins to feel meaningful. They may misunderstand kindness as pressure or interpret emotional depth as risk. Over time, these reactions shape decisions that quietly weaken the connection. Yet what truly matters is not the mistake itself, but the awareness that follows. Hidden tests are not designed to label someone as right or wrong. They exist to reveal emotional readiness. When reflection eventually replaces defensiveness, insight begins to form. The person starts to recognize that the situation was guiding them toward greater self-understanding. They may realize that patience, communication, and honesty were the real lessons being presented. In this way, even failure carries purpose because it creates the possibility of growth. Every emotional experience leaves behind understanding for those willing to examine it, and through that understanding, future choices become more conscious, balanced, and sincere. Projection is one of the most subtle psychological forces influencing human relationships, yet most people remain unaware of how strongly it shapes their perceptions. When individuals carry unresolved emotions or unexamined beliefs, these inner elements do not remain silent. Instead, they appear outwardly through interpretation. A person may assume intentions that were never expressed or react emotionally to meanings that were never present. In relationships, this often happens when someone encounters a person who reflects qualities they have not fully accepted within themselves. Calmness may be interpreted as distance, honesty may be mistaken for criticism, and emotional depth may feel overwhelming. These reactions are not created by the connection alone, but by the inner world of the observer. The hidden test within such moments is the ability to pause and ask whether the reaction comes from present reality or past emotional memory. Without this pause, projection takes control and replaces understanding with assumption. Many relationships weaken not because care was absent, but because awareness was delayed. When a person begins to recognize their projections, emotional clarity slowly replaces confusion, allowing communication to become more balanced and sincere. Failing this kind of inner test often feels ordinary at first because projection rarely announces itself clearly. It operates quietly through repeated interpretations that feel natural and justified. A person may believe they are protecting themselves while they are actually protecting old fears. Over time, this pattern builds emotional distance, not through intentional rejection, but through misunderstood perception. The turning point arrives when reflection begins. Awareness allows individuals to notice emotional patterns that once felt automatic. They may recognize that certain reactions appeared in multiple relationships, revealing that the pattern was internal rather than situational. This realization transforms failure into insight. Hidden tests are valuable because they gently guide individuals toward self-observation without forcing immediate change. Growth becomes possible when curiosity replaces defensiveness. Instead of asking why someone else behaved a certain way, the person begins asking why they felt triggered or uncertain. Through this shift, emotional responsibility develops naturally. Projection loses its influence when understanding increases and relationships become less about reacting to imagined meanings and more about responding to genuine connection built through clarity, patience, and conscious awareness. Avoidance of self-reflection often appears harmless because it allows life to continue without emotional discomfort. Yet beneath this surface comfort, it quietly shapes the direction of relationships and personal growth. When individuals move through experiences without examining their reactions, patterns begin repeating without clear explanation. A misunderstanding occurs, distance forms, and eventually the connection fades, leaving behind unanswered questions. Instead of exploring their emotional responses, many people attribute outcomes entirely to external circumstances. This habit strengthens over time, making self-reflection feel unnecessary or even intimidating. However, meaningful relationships naturally challenge this avoidance because they bring emotional depth and vulnerability into awareness. When someone enters a person's life with sincerity and emotional presence, it activates inner thoughts and feelings that were previously unnoticed. The hidden test within such moments is the willingness to observe rather than escape these reactions. Self-reflection does not demand perfection, it simply requires honesty. It invites a person to ask why certain emotions arise and what they reveal about past experiences or personal expectations. Without this process, emotional growth slows, and similar misunderstandings begin appearing in different forms across future relationships. When self-reflection is avoided repeatedly, decisions become guided by comfort rather than understanding. A person may withdraw from emotional depth, believing they are protecting stability, yet this choice often prevents meaningful connection from developing fully. Over time, the absence of reflection creates emotional distance, not only from others, but also from one's own inner awareness. The hidden test is therefore not about maintaining a relationship at any cost, but about recognizing the lessons each connection offers. When individuals begin reflecting on their reactions, they notice patterns that were once invisible. They may realize that certain fears influenced their communication, or that assumptions replaced open conversation. This realization transforms past experiences into insight rather than regret. Failure in such tests becomes valuable because it encourages awareness that might not have developed otherwise. Reflection gradually replaces avoidance, allowing emotional maturity to strengthen naturally. As awareness grows, relationships are approached with greater clarity and patience. Instead of repeating automatic reactions, individuals begin responding with understanding shaped by experience. Through this process, personal growth becomes steady and intentional, and each future connection benefits from the lessons learned through honest self-observation. Emotional responsibility is one of the most important yet often overlooked elements in human relationships. It does not mean controlling every feeling or becoming unaffected by challenges. Rather, it means recognizing that reactions carry meaning and influence outcomes. When two people form a connection, emotions naturally move between understanding and uncertainty. Small misunderstandings, differences in communication styles, or moments of vulnerability are part of every meaningful bond. The hidden test appears in how these moments are handled. Some individuals respond by observing their emotions and expressing them calmly, while others react quickly through assumption or defensiveness. Emotional responsibility begins with awareness, the ability to pause and recognize what is truly being felt before turning that feeling into action. Without this pause, reactions often reflect temporary discomfort rather than thoughtful understanding. Many relationships do not weaken because care disappears, but because emotional reactions are expressed without reflection. Responsibility therefore becomes the bridge between emotion and clarity, allowing connection to grow through communication instead of confusion. When emotional responsibility is avoided, patterns of misunderstanding begin forming quietly over time. A person may expect others to interpret their feelings without clear communication, or they may interpret silence as negative intention. These assumptions create distance because they replace dialogue with interpretation. The hidden test within such situations asks whether the individual is willing to take ownership of their emotional responses instead of assigning complete responsibility to external circumstances. This does not remove the importance of mutual effort, but it strengthens personal awareness. When someone learns to communicate feelings with honesty and balance, emotional stability develops naturally. They begin to notice that calm expression often resolves confusion faster than reactive conclusions. Even when mistakes occur, responsibility allows reflection to transform those moments into growth. Emotional maturity does not eliminate challenges, but it changes how they are approached. Relationships then become spaces of learning rather than cycles of repeated misunderstanding. Through consistent awareness, individuals recognize that emotional responsibility is not a burden, but a form of inner strength that supports deeper trust, clearer communication, and more meaningful connection over time. Fear of change often moves quietly through the human mind, shaping decisions without announcing itself directly. Many people believe they resist change only in large life situations, yet emotional change within relationships can feel equally challenging. When a meaningful connection begins to encourage growth, vulnerability, or new perspectives, it naturally shifts familiar emotional patterns. This shift can feel uncertain because it asks a person to move beyond reactions that once provided comfort. Instead of recognizing this as development, the mind may reinterpret the experience as risk. A person may begin to question the connection, not because something is wrong, but because something is different. The hidden test appears in this moment of emotional transition. It asks whether the individual will remain open to growth or return to familiar emotional habits. Fear often disguises itself through judgment, distance, or overthinking, creating the illusion that withdrawal is clarity. In reality, the discomfort is simply the mind adjusting to new emotional awareness. Relationships that carry depth naturally introduce change because they reflect parts of the self that are still evolving. Accepting this process requires patience and trust in gradual understanding rather than immediate certainty. When fear of change is not recognized, it begins influencing behavior in subtle ways. A person may avoid important conversations or interpret emotional closeness as pressure. These reactions are rarely intentional. They are protective responses formed from past experiences. However, when such patterns remain unexamined, they can quietly weaken meaningful connections. The hidden test within these moments is not about eliminating fear, but about observing it without allowing it to control decisions. Awareness transforms fear into insight because it reveals what emotional areas still require growth. When individuals begin acknowledging their hesitation instead of reacting automatically, emotional balance strengthens. They learn that change does not remove identity, it expands understanding. Even when a connection does not continue, the recognition of fear becomes valuable because it prepares the individual for future relationships with greater clarity. Growth often begins where comfort ends, and relationships become powerful teachers when approached with openness. Through reflection, fear gradually loses its influence, allowing emotional confidence to develop in a steady and natural way. Unconscious patterns influence human behavior far more than most people realize, quietly shaping reactions, expectations, and emotional decisions. These patterns are formed through past experiences, early beliefs, and repeated emotional responses that become familiar over time. Because they operate beneath conscious awareness, individuals often assume their reactions are purely based on present situations. However, meaningful relationships tend to activate these hidden patterns quickly. When someone enters a person's life with emotional depth or sincerity, it may trigger responses connected to earlier experiences rather than the current reality. A person might become distant without understanding why, or overly cautious without clear reason. The hidden test within these moments is the ability to recognize that not every reaction belongs to the present moment. Awareness allows individuals to observe emotional responses instead of automatically acting upon them. Without this awareness, unconscious patterns continue guiding decisions, often repeating similar outcomes across different relationships. Recognizing these patterns does not require blame or regret. It requires curiosity about how past experiences continue influencing present perception. When unconscious patterns remain unexamined, they gradually create emotional habits that feel natural but may limit personal growth. A person may believe they are protecting themselves by maintaining distance or controlling emotional expression, yet these behaviors may simply reflect earlier experiences that are no longer relevant. The hidden test appears when a relationship offers the opportunity to respond differently. This moment asks whether the individual will repeat familiar reactions or explore new emotional understanding. Change becomes possible when reflection replaces automatic response. By noticing patterns such as recurring misunderstandings or repeated emotional withdrawal, individuals begin connecting present reactions to past influences. This awareness reduces confusion because it separates reality from memory-driven interpretation. Over time, emotional choices become more intentional rather than habitual. Even when mistakes occur, understanding the presence of unconscious patterns transforms those experiences into insight. Growth then becomes a gradual process of replacing automatic reactions with thoughtful awareness, allowing future relationships to develop with greater clarity, stability, and emotional balance. Timing plays a quiet yet powerful role in human relationships, often determining whether understanding develops or confusion takes its place. Two people may meet with genuine connection, mutual respect, and emotional depth, yet still struggle to maintain harmony if their inner growth is moving at different speeds. Emotional readiness cannot be forced because awareness develops gradually through personal experiences. When a person is still learning to understand their own fears or emotional patterns, even a sincere relationship may feel overwhelming. The hidden test within such moments is not about effort alone, but about alignment between awareness and opportunity. A meaningful connection may arrive at a time when one individual is open to reflection, while the other is still operating through protective habits. This difference creates subtle tension. One person seeks clarity through communication, while the other seeks comfort through distance. Neither intention is necessarily wrong, yet the imbalance affects how the relationship unfolds. Timing, therefore, becomes an invisible influence, guiding whether emotional lessons are recognized immediately or understood later through reflection. Many connections are not lost because of lack of care, but because understanding had not yet reached the depth required to sustain emotional growth together. When awareness develops after the experience has passed, people often look back with new clarity. They begin to recognize emotional patterns that once felt confusing, realizing that certain reactions were shaped more by personal readiness than by the relationship itself. This realization transforms disappointment into insight. The hidden test was not about holding the connection perfectly, but about learning from the emotional responses it revealed. Growth frequently occurs in stages, and some lessons require distance before they become fully visible. As individuals mature emotionally, they notice how timing influenced their choices, communication, and interpretations. They may understand that vulnerability once felt uncomfortable because emotional confidence was still forming. With this awareness, future relationships are approached differently. Patience increases, assumptions decrease, and communication becomes more thoughtful. Timing then shifts from being a source of regret to becoming a source of wisdom. Every meaningful experience contributes to readiness for the next stage of emotional understanding, allowing connections to develop with greater balance, clarity, and mutual awareness when inner growth and opportunity finally move together. Failure in a hidden emotional test is often misunderstood because people tend to see failure as an ending rather than a stage of awareness. In reality, many emotional lessons are only recognized after reflection replaces immediate reaction. When a meaningful connection reveals insecurity, fear, or misunderstanding, the experience may feel confusing in the moment. A person might focus on external circumstances instead of observing their internal responses, yet every deep interaction leaves behind emotional signals that continue working quietly within memory. Over time, these signals begin to form understanding. The individual starts to notice patterns in their reactions, communication habits, or expectations that were not visible before. This is where failure transforms into insight. The hidden purpose was never to create loss, but to encourage awareness. Emotional growth rarely happens without discomfort, because awareness requires honesty. When people allow themselves to reflect without self-judgment, they begin to see how the experience guided them towards stronger emotional clarity. The connection itself becomes meaningful not only for what it was, but for what it revealed about personal development. As awareness strengthens, the idea of failure begins to change completely. Instead of viewing the past through regret, individuals begin seeing it through learning. They recognize that emotional maturity develops gradually, and that every relationship contributes to that process. The hidden test was not about perfection or immediate understanding. It was about readiness to grow through experience. When someone accepts this perspective, emotional resilience increases naturally. They become more patient with their own progress and more understanding toward others. Future relationships benefit from this shift because communication becomes clearer and reactions become more balanced. Rather than repeating automatic emotional patterns, the person responds with thoughtful awareness shaped by reflection. In this way, what once appeared as a missed opportunity becomes a foundation for deeper emotional strength. Every lesson carries forward into future connections, allowing trust and understanding to develop with greater stability. Growth then continues not through dramatic change, but through consistent awareness built from experiences that once seemed uncertain but later revealed their purpose. Inner transformation often begins in moments that seem emotionally confusing rather than clearly meaningful. When a relationship brings unexpected reactions to the surface, it quietly reveals layers of the personality that were previously unnoticed. These reactions may include doubt, hesitation, emotional intensity, or even withdrawal. At first, people usually interpret these responses as being caused entirely by the situation or by the other person. However, deeper awareness shows that such moments are reflections of internal change beginning to take shape. The hidden test within these experiences is the willingness to observe emotional movement instead of immediately controlling or escaping it. Every meaningful connection invites individuals to step beyond familiar emotional patterns and consider new ways of understanding themselves. This process does not happen instantly because the mind naturally prefers stability over uncertainty. When emotional depth challenges that stability, discomfort appears. Yet discomfort is not a signal of failure. It is often a signal of growth beginning. When individuals pause and reflect, they start recognizing that emotional reactions are guiding them toward areas of personal development that require attention. Without this awareness, opportunities for transformation pass quietly, leaving patterns unchanged. As reflection deepens, individuals begin to understand that relationships do not only exist to create comfort, but also to expand awareness. Emotional experiences become teachers, showing how perception influences connection. When someone learns to observe their reactions with honesty, they notice how assumptions, past memories, or personal expectations shape their interpretation of present events. This realization transforms emotional confusion into clarity. The hidden test is not about maintaining perfect behavior, but about developing conscious awareness through experience. Even when misunderstandings occur, reflection allows those moments to become insight rather than regret. Over time, this awareness strengthens emotional balance, making future relationships more stable and intentional. People who embrace this process begin responding with understanding instead of reacting through uncertainty. They communicate more openly, listen more carefully, and interpret situations with greater patience. Transformation then becomes gradual and natural, built through repeated awareness rather than sudden change. Each experience contributes to emotional maturity, guiding individuals toward deeper connection not only with others, but also with their own evolving inner understanding. Integration of insight is the final stage in understanding hidden tests presented through meaningful relationships. Every emotional experience, whether perceived as success or failure at the moment, carries a subtle invitation to expand awareness. When a person reflects on their responses, patterns, and fears, they begin to recognize how past experiences have shaped present behavior. This process of integration is not sudden. It unfolds gradually as reflection replaces immediate reaction. The hidden test within relationships is often invisible because its purpose is internal rather than external. The individual is being asked to notice emotional triggers, assumptions, and unconscious habits that influence how connections develop. Integration requires patience, honesty, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable emotions without judgment. It transforms confusion into clarity, allowing insight to guide future decisions. Each connection that once felt challenging or confusing becomes a mirror, showing the individual areas that need conscious attention. Through this lens, past experiences that were once sources of frustration or disappointment are reframed as essential steps in personal growth and understanding. As integration progresses, emotional resilience strengthens naturally. Individuals begin to respond to relationships with greater awareness and balance rather than automatically repeating patterns shaped by fear or avoidance. They notice how timing, emotional responsibility, and unconscious patterns interact to create outcomes in their connections. With this awareness, they are better equipped to communicate openly, observe their own reactions, and engage in relationships with thoughtful clarity. The hidden test reveals its purpose fully only when insight is consciously applied. What once might have been seen as failure or missed opportunity is recognized as preparation for deeper connection and understanding. Integration does not mean that challenges disappear, but it means that challenges are met with conscious awareness rather than reactive habit. Emotional growth, therefore, becomes cumulative. Each insight builds upon the last, guiding the individual toward increasingly authentic relationships and a more coherent inner life. Over time, the lessons of hidden tests are not only learned, but embodied, allowing future connections to flourish with wisdom, patience, and clarity that were once unavailable.